Chris Thorndike is without a doubt one of the most hated characters in the Sonic franchise. Despite the constant clashing of opinions and discourse in the fanbase, the one thing that seems pretty unanimous is that this kid is the worst. Personally, I like Chris a lot. Yeah, if you're new here, hi, I'm Cosmo, and I have a lot of unpopular opinions. But as always, today I'll be trying to explain my unpopular opinions as well as possible. Like my Cosmo defense video, we'll be starting off with responding to common criticisms of Chris's character. Let's begin. Many people argue that Chris is useless. And yeah, I see it. This kid is always getting kidnapped, dropping Chaos Emeralds, running his mouth. Dude, get it together. But honestly, if you think about it, this makes sense. Chris isn't a veteran hero like Sonic or his friends, he's just a dumb kid. He's never seen these glowing rocks or interacted with a mad scientist before. Honestly, I think if any of us were 12-year-olds in this situation, we would do the same thing. Another common criticism of Chris is that he's annoying. He's clingy, whiny, and selfish. He stops Sonic from going home. This kid is the worst. Again, I can see why people find Chris annoying, but I disagree. Chris is, in my opinion, a really well-balanced character. In spite of his flaws, Chris is not a bad person. He's friendly, passionate, and always looking to help, even if he doesn't have much to offer the team in the beginning. A good example of this is the first episode, where Chris saves Sonic from his pool even though his mom doesn't really understand why he'd go through all that trouble for an animal. In episode 18, he mentions that when he grows up, he wants to go into zoology and help animals. It's made pretty clear that throughout the series that Chris has a heart of gold, it's just buried beneath all that cringy but painfully accurate 12-year-old angst. But I think one of Chris's greatest traits is his surprising insightfulness. In episode 38, he gives this speech to Shadow that is easily one of my favorite dialogues in the entire Sonic franchise.
そうだね。あそこでは毎日争い事が絶えない。みんなわがままで、自分勝手で、バカな人間ばかりかもしれない。でもみんな生きてるんだよ。一生懸命生きて、頑張って、いつかみんなでもっと幸せになろうって。その未来を奪わないで。お願い。みんなにチャンスを与えてあげて。
This speech is incredible for many reasons. First, I like that he doesn't dismiss Shadow's pain. He acknowledges that humans are self-centered and cause a lot of hurt. But he asks for Shadow to give them another chance because in the end, everyone is just trying their best. And this is what I love about Chris's character, this dichotomy of immaturity and insightfulness. He's a spoiled rich kid who often makes rash, selfish decisions. But on some level, Chris understands how the world works. His parents' absence throughout most of his childhood has somewhat tainted his worldview. And yeah, here's where we need to talk about Chris's childhood for a moment. In the first few episodes, it's established that Chris is a spoiled rich kid. His father is a successful businessman, and his mom is the extremely famous actress Lindsay Fair. Chris lives in this humongous mansion with maids and a pool, and guys, this thing is a monster. In episode 2, Chris's mom mentions sending a bunch of gifts over on his father's private jet. Chris is obviously privileged and spoiled, but as we discover later on, he is not happy. His parents, while obviously caring and loving people, are pretty much absent from his life. This results in Chris being very lonely and emotionally unfulfilled. He has friends, sure, but nobody really clicks with him. All of Chris's flaws can be attributed in part to his lonesome childhood. His privileged lifestyle makes him a bit self-centered, and at times he's unable to comprehend the impact of his actions, outside of his own personal gain. And his clinginess pretty explicitly comes from his loneliness. Sonic's one of the only consistent people in his life, and once Sonic leaves, he'll be alone again. So he hangs on to him and their newfound friendship. I'm not arguing that Chris doesn't have flaws or irritating personality traits. I'm just saying that they're intentional and make sense. And a flawed character isn't always inherently a bad character. Now, if Chris had just stayed like this throughout the entire series, I would definitely agree that Chris is annoying and a waste of space among an otherwise great cast of characters. But I could make an entire video on why Sonic X Season 3 is the magnum opus of Sonic-related television. One of the reasons is definitely how it utilizes its cast, especially Chris. First, they actually give Chris some development. He's now 18 years old, albeit stuck in a 12-year-old's body, and over the last 6 years, he's definitely grown and matured. For one, instead of sulking about Sonic leaving, he takes an active role in getting to see him again. He's the one who works on this portal and eventually gets it to function. Already, we can see how much he's changed. While he'd often rely on Sonic or others in general to fix situations in the past, Chris now has the agency and determination to stand on his own feet. Season 3 Chris is almost like a parallel to his Season 1 and 2 self. Instead of being rash and rushing into fights he obviously can't win, Chris now knows his strengths and weaknesses, and utilizes his strengths in order to best help the team. For example, instead of trying to outright fight Eggman again, he seizes a more behind-the-scenes role as the tech and scientist guy. A good example of this is when he makes Sonic his water shoes. Chris knows his strength isn't in physical combat, so he embraces what he's actually good at, that being inventing and leadership. Instead of being the damsel in distress, Chris is oftentimes a voice of reason among the chaotic Typhoon crew. And of course, instead of being clingy, like he was when he stopped Sonic from going home in Season 2, Chris is now mature and emotionally intelligent enough to realize that he has to let Sonic go. This moment where he once would have desperately fought against fate truly showcases Chris's growth throughout the Sonic series. He started off impulsive, insecure, and unhappy, but ends the series as a competent, confident person who has finally learned to make peace with the inevitable. Another reason people dislike Chris is that they believe his presence is unnecessary. And while I agree that I definitely would have wanted to see more of Sonic interacting with Tails, Amy, Knuckles, etc., I don't think Chris's large presence in the show was wasted time. His growth is not only tangible and satisfying, but, in a sense, relatable. Obviously, Chris was put in Sonic X as sort of an audience stand-in, someone that all of the children watching could easily relate to, as they imagined going on their own adventures with the Blue Blur and his friends. But I think Chris is also disliked because he's not an everyman in the conventional sense. Most of these protagonists in children's media are blank slates, characters deliberately given very little personality in order to relate to as many kids as possible. Think of Harry Potter, for example. But Chris defies this archetype. He's far from a Mary Sue, or I guess a Gary Stu. But you know what? So are all the kids watching. I'll argue that Chris's flaws only make him more relatable. Sure, we can't relate to living in this huge mansion and our parents having enough money to buy the Ritz, but many of us can relate to Chris's loneliness and his struggle to find his place. And that makes it all the more cathartic and inspiring when he eventually grows up, when he accepts and embraces his strengths, and when he finds peace in a sometimes painful, ever-changing world. Because hey, if this snot-nosed kid can find his place in the world, why can't we?